will go into the, so this recording will go into the Zoom folder that we can put up in WeVideo. All right, I think we are good to go. We are recording, and this is a walkthrough of the new 360 camera that Sarah and Michael and Alpina have gotten. So Lance, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. How do I sound, by the way? I was playing with the audio settings. Is it okay? All right.
You sound like you're far away, but otherwise you sound great.
Okay. Nice and close. Between Luz and I, Luz is actually the expert about the equipment itself and more of the practical side of it. So I'm going to open by covering some of the like basics of like setting up your shots and like how you should think about your 360 recording, because there are a lot of differences from 2D recording or cinematic recording. So I'll cover some of those, and if you have any questions about that, you can ask me, but more of the nuts and bolts of the equipment you have should go to Luz, if that's okay with you, Luz. Yeah, okay. So anyway, I prepared a slide or two, and I'll share those with you now. Okay. All right. So as promised, we'll cover some of the best practices for 360 video, because before people have experience with 360 video, they let their imagination run wild. They just think of all the potential for what they can do, but not understanding that it does come with some pretty big limitations. So 360 video has a great use case in tourism. And the reason it works very well for tourism is that it shows you like an immersive view of a place that you could visit. And when you see this in 360, you enjoy the fact that you're seeing it, but you also want to be there. It becomes attractive to you. So this is a very good selling point to see like all around you, just to get a complete picture of where you'll be. And the same for real estate. So if you want a complete view of a place that you would like to rent or buy, a very good use case is real estate, because you can sit there and not worry about your pictures being curated to make it look a bit different, but just to give it very realistically. And the same would be said for a job environment too, which is what we're most interested in seeing a work environment. And the commonality between these three is that the focus of what we're seeing is the environment itself. So you treat the environment as a character rather than the individuals inside it. So that's really the benefit of 360 and the thing to keep in mind. So in 360, we really want to focus on the environment rather than individual characters a lot of the time. So I have an example of a video, and I'd like to, if you could, have you spot the problem. You can't hear this, right?
Nope.
Okay. Let me reshare. Hit the share sound button. And try again.
Level, but that one's not. What is it that creates brand success in the consumer packaged goods world? Well, if that were an easy question to answer, I guess we'd say everybody would do it. Not so much easy, but there are best practices. And those best practices start with understanding the problem you're solving. And that starts first with the person that's buying this product. What problem are you solving for them with your...
Okay, so we have this video of a scene slowly spinning and somebody walking past, and it's actually shot in 360. So when we say can we spot the problem? Actually, there's no problem with the scene. Everything is okay as long as it's in 2D. Like so, for a 2D film, it's very well shot. The person obviously has a lot of experience with 2D. But if we watch the same video again, you will easily be able to
Now,
see the problem.
Why is this one successful on a national
And the
level?
problem
but
is
that
this:
one's
it's
not?
actually
What
a
is it that creates
360
brand
a
success
360
in the consumer
film.
packaged goods world?
So
Now, why?
this 360 film, when you have a camera spinning in a 360 environment, you're forcing the user to change their perspective against their will. So when you're spinning a camera or moving a camera in any way, basically the viewer has no control over what's happening. And it can make people feel uncomfortable or frustrated. Maybe they were focusing on something, but like something in the scene, but they have to move their head to follow it. And in the worst case, it can make people sick because there's a difference between what you're seeing in front of you and what your body is actually doing. So if the world starts turning, but you in fact are staying still, well, your body thinks that it has been poisoned. Like literally, your body thinks it's been poisoned, and you should probably vomit now just to get rid of the poison. But no, it's just a 360 video. So it's important to keep in mind that everything you might think you know in 2D should be left aside because we now need to record for 360. So what we're going to cover here is some of the basic best practices for 360. So yeah, I explained that. That's fine. Yeah, so yeah, just to say again that 360 video is a mindset. Remember that whenever you record something, you're recording from the perspective of the viewer. Like being creative or different with your shots can be very disorienting or uncomfortable for the viewer. So remember, first of all, that your camera is there to capture an environment, as I said. Yeah, you want to pay close attention to everything that's happening around you. And also that your camera is a surrogate for the audience and the first person perspective. So, so yeah, just like imagine when you're setting up your shots that you're actually watching this happen through a video in some way. And as you get more experience, this will be, of course, much easier. So how do we do this? Well, we do this, of course, through planning, careful planning of our shots. So this is an outline of the different types of plans you need to make, including location, height, the objects in the scene, the action that's taking place, the audio, the speakers, and the lighting. So when Lou speaks, she'll have some things to add as well to each of these. This is just an overview. Okay, so in planning your shots, I give 3 different types of shots. The first one is an environment shot. So the tourism example I gave, the real estate example, those are environment shots. And for us, we want people not to be familiar with, of course, beautiful islands unless they're working there. But we just want to show a workplace so they can get a real sense of what they will experience, what they will see and be around from day to day. So there are, of course, action shots, and those reveal an activity related to the job. And then interview or speaking shots. So for some of them, or perhaps all of the videos that are made, there will be a conversation happening as well. And we'll go into detail about how to handle that. But yeah, those are the 3 types we'll talk about: environment, action, and let's say interview. So first of all, the location. So when you set up the camera in a location, if you want maximum exposure of the work environment, you want to make sure your line of sight is very clear. So if some objects are too close, they can be an obstruction. And especially in, for example, let's say construction environments, you might have like like a stone column or wooden beams that kind of obscure the view in front of you. So just make sure you're aware of those and try to find like the view you want to get the effect that you want. And also be aware that even though this is 360, the viewer's attention may never like reach the entire scene. They might just focus on one area of interest. That's why some people also do like a 180 video, especially for scenes that include a lot of characters, because it's really hard to, in the 360 environment, just to get them to focus on like 120 of those degrees. But if it's a 180 video, you might have a 360 film with character actors or something like that. Okay, so in the environment, make sure that the viewer can clearly see the environment from the position of the camera. So, so just like put yourself in the in the camera's line of sight, and just say how easy is it to see this, and also make sure that the scene is balanced, so that there isn't a lot of distortion like in the scene. So nothing is like too close, or something that you want them to see is too far away. So you don't want people to like struggle to see something, especially if their eyesight isn't very good like mine. You don't want them to be squinting and just trying to see what's happening in a distant location. Okay, for action, we should ask ourselves, can the viewer clearly see the action? Is it too far, too close? Is it a good angle? Is the viewer's attention on the action or somewhere else? Okay, and we'll talk more about action shots in a moment, but the same rule applies. So if an action is happening, do we get a good angle on that? And I'll give some illustrations soon. And then in speaking shots, we'll talk in more detail about this, but like, can the viewer clearly see the speaker? Again, are they too far, too close? Is it a good angle? And is the viewer's attention on the action or somewhere else? But we'll talk more about that and why usually it's better not to have the subject of an interview inside the shot. Okay, so there's a problem here as well, specifically in this frame, and that is your speaker is too close. So when the speaker is too close, and like imagine this is a first-person perspective, like you're staring into the person's torso basically. Normally, when we see somebody, we want to look up and see and look them in the eyes. But when they're close like that, there can be some distortion too, like the top of their head gets stretched. So it's important to be aware that the 360 view, like I mean, anything spherical can introduce a lot of distortion if done poorly. So yeah, it's too close and it's too low, as I mentioned. And if you want to experiment with this, you can, but 360 videos, I mean, you're not going to naturally get a shot like this, but you can introduce the potential from some serious distortion to your scene, just by being way too close like that. But yeah, there are a number of ways that this can happen. Okay, so also consider height, not just the distance from you and your subject or the objects around you, but make sure that you're not too low is usually the problem. So you should have a camera placed near or just below eye level for every type of shot. If they're a little more distant, maybe you could be a little bit lower also. But yeah, just make sure you're not staring into their torso.
And I would love to just jump in with a couple of shots that we did. I'm 6'2", and sometimes I'll put the camera at my eye level, and then people are also looking down from that camera. So it's really, about putting that camera around the 5'10", 5'11" mark, the most average sort of space that you can find for the most viewers, adults, of course. If you were doing kid viewers, it's different. But yeah, I just wanted to jump in there because I've taken a couple shots and I'm like, oh, not my height. Their height.
Yeah, no, exactly. And these images are meant to illustrate that. So in film, like in 2D film, these creative shots, they're very compelling because we suddenly, through the change in perspective, become very interested in the scene. But again, that's 2D. In a 360 mindset, it becomes disorienting. Like suddenly you feel very tall if the camera's too high, but usually you feel very small because people are too close and looking down at you. Okay, so think of the objects in the scene as well. So we talked before about the limits of attention because we, at any one time, are basically looking at like 120 degrees as our field of view. If we struggle, like we can get to 180, but like 120 is usually the limit. So so you're only using like 1/3 of your potential field of view when you're looking at a 360 video. And you might want to focus the viewer's attention on just one area. So if you look at these two things, of course, your eye is more drawn to the left side because there's more happening, there's more to interpret, and you want to see what's happening. And if you follow like where in the scene you're focused on, probably like this line of objects led you right to the guitar, and this stuffed dog. So yeah, if for example there's some important piece of equipment or some interesting action happening here, you can use objects to lead the viewer in the right direction. So at an advanced level, but at the very least to make sure that there's a clear line of sight and it's not too far away. But you can use objects as well. So for actions, when you set up your shot for actions, actually the intuition is to put it like right behind the person who's doing the action. Unless there's like a table here and they're working on a table, of course you can set up on the other side of that. But somebody just painting a wall, it's like, how would you set up that shot? And we're like, oh, well, I'll just do it behind them. And you're just basically watching the back of a person, like as they're painting a wall or doing some other kind of action. So you might not want that in the end. Instead, set up a shot to give a view of what they are doing. Of course, being aware of your environment, making sure that there aren't a lot of obstructions, but you do want to see what they're doing meaningfully. So like at least get a like their face in profile or something like that. This also doesn't work because this is someone spinning their child around in the 360 video. And at some points it might look okay, but you can already see there's some distortion here, like as it reaches the top of the view. And like when they're spinning around, there's going to be a fair amount of stretching, like as they move across the stitching and like different parts of the view. So be aware of the action that is taking place. Try not to make it too vigorous, or there will be some distortion present there too, especially when it's horizontal movement, like moving back and forth. Lighting is one of the biggest problems in 360 video because we know that in 2D, like you can set up lights like this, like here and here and here, just to make sure that there is a good view of the scene. But you do not have that option in 360 because if you put these lights there, people can see them. And you're looking around and you're saying, oh, what are these lights doing here? That's weird. Like, why would you put studio lights inside of a construction site or something like that? So this becomes an important part of the planning because I think I have another slide. Yeah. This becomes an important part of the planning because you easily light a scene very well. And if it looks too dim, it just seems like poor quality. So you want to make sure that you are doing it at the right time of day, like to get the most light you can into the scene. You want, even if it's daytime, turn on all the lights. They turn on all the lights, make sure they're on. Yeah, make sure it's a sunny day. And yeah, you can use doors and windows as well. But as Lou's warned me, if for example, like you're pointed directly at a window, it might like have that kind of shine right there. It's the same for 2D and 360. So yeah, try not to get a direct view of the window because there can be a lot of glare from the differential. But yeah, as you'll see, as long as it's not direct, then I am getting some light on myself. And then finally, audio. In audio, you do have your camera microphone, of course, which like it's just in the center, getting the audio from all around the environment, like every little sound, and that could be appropriate. But if, for example, there's some action taking place, let's say in one corner of the room, like somebody is like doing some kind of work, and you want the audio from that more represented, you can of course use another microphone, like a second microphone. It can easily just be a phone or something like that. That's recording. So you have a recording here and a recording here, and then you put those together in mixing so that you can better hear it. Here, one second. My mouth is getting dry. Okay, and of course we can talk more about audio mixing tools if you want as well. They're not very complicated. So voiceover is probably going to be your friend for this specific purpose of building for workforce, because when you're doing when you record the environment of a scene of a workplace and you're getting the audio from that workplace, then all of that is fine. But suddenly, when somebody is speaking and you need to hear very easily what they're saying, then the audio quality just seems to take a dip. It's just not as good because you're trying to hear the person speak over the other noises that are happening around them. So this is why for a lot of projects like this, we just use a voiceover. So we just set our camera, record the scene, and then later at a computer with a medium to high quality microphone, just get them to talk about the job, and then just add that to the video. It's really the easiest way to get good quality audio for your video is just to have a voiceover and don't even worry about the speaker. So speaking of the speaker, the subject of job shadow videos is not the person that you're talking to. It's not necessarily about the individual story, but instead it's about the job itself. They are there to tell you about like what the job is, like how to prepare, what they and anybody in this job will do from day to day. And yes, this means that we don't need to get like up close and personal with any one person. Like we can comfortably just record the scene, the people in the scene, without making them basically the star of the show, because the job itself is the focus of attention. So it's highly recommended to just record like an average day on the work site, like showing people the things that they might be doing within that job, and then just take the person in that job and have them explain what's happening, like using a computer or a high quality microphone, and then put that in the video later. However, if like your speaker is very photogenic, they look like a natural movie star or something, it could be a better choice to use them. because they will attract people more to the job. There are some ways to do that, but I personally think it might be better to have your speaker speaking directly to the camera rather than to the interviewer or another person beside them. Because if there are two people there, like having this interview, it can be like just like watching two different people have a conversation when in truth we should be focusing on like what's happening within the job site and getting a view of that, because when you're just watching two people talk about a job, there's no longer a need to have it in 360. You can do that in 2D, you can do that in just audio, and it'd be exactly the same. So so yeah, again, it's fine to have a speaker if they really want to be on camera or you think they're doing an amazing job, but make sure that you don't neglect the environment when you include a speaker as a focus. So yeah. So the interviewer can be a distraction when in the scene, and if necessary, they can hide behind something just so they're not visible or something. So. Okay, and there we go. So I know Luz is going to cover the equipment and some more of that in perhaps greater detail, but if you want to break in, like ask us something or give some thoughts, it would be a good time.
I think we're good so far.
Okay. So in that case, I'm still here, so Luz and I can both be available to answer questions.
Hey. Thanks, Lance. I did have just a couple of questions for you, Lance, and that is, in that lighting example that you used, one of the things that we have run into, and it's good to let people know, is when there are lights on, fluorescence, like in that, for instance, in that grocery store, you get a very different view than when you have natural light or when you have actually just incandescence. So any tips around that?
Moto G7 play disconnected.
What was that?
I don't know.
That was me, sorry.
So maybe, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, for some scenes, you're looking for the least bad option, I guess, because like having glaring light might be better than having too little light in those cases. And like when you see, like even behind me right now, an exceptionally bright light, you're just going to know not to look directly into that light and focus on what you need to focus on. But if the light is too dark, you're going to be struggling to see, and it's not, I don't know, it just doesn't make the workplace attractive. Like if everything is too dim, because you're like, oh, what kind of dreary job is this? Like stumbling through the dark day after day. So that might be worse. Luz, what do you think? Like we talked about this last week. But.
Right. Well, I think lighting is obviously super important, and one of the biggest challenges, not only in 360 but just in regular videos as well. Exposing an interior as well as a window is one of the most challenging things to do. I think once you start filming and you acquire more and more experience, I think you're gonna start to experiment. But a couple of things, for example, that I can think of is, if you're going to be in a workspace, you could dangle a couple of, if it's really, really dark, you can dangle a couple of work lights, for example, lighting that looks natural to the environment. If you're in a dark office and you already have a couple of lamps on and everything, maybe add another lamp that's in an exterior space and bring it in. You know, I think you might have to have that creative mindset Yeah, on the spot. If you look at your iPad or your phone and it's just looking, you know, too dark or too like hot spots, you call that hot. With time, you're gonna stop using auto exposure, I think, and you're going to start experimenting with ISO, for example. Are you guys familiar with ISO? ISO. It's on your phones. It's in a lot of spots now, cameras, digital cameras. It basically, the higher the ISO, the more light the image is. The problem is that, well, it's not an exposure, but I guess that's another technicality. Anyways, ISO, the higher the number, the more light, but the less resolution and more noise, the less clean the image is. So that's why your ISO, you always kind of have to balance it. And it's better to have it lower and start experimenting, putting it one up, 100, 200, 300, 400. It's never recommended to go above 600. And how you compensate for that is, for example, turning all of your interior lamps and light sources, like Lance said, perhaps opening a window, but even this window, it's a light source and you can regulate it. For example, I could, is it okay if I do a practical example? I'm gonna go right into my window and explain to you that, well, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do first. There's two shades on that thing, on that window. So one is just the fabric, right? So that will be more translucent. And the other one's a complete blackout. So for example, here in this practical scenario, like if I take that cloth up, it's going to become even more white and more washed out. So that's actually doing something, but it's not solving the problem. For example, if this was an actual shot that I needed to do and I needed to, you know, have my face and whatever, and that looks, to me, that looks bad. That's hot, that's too hot. So what I would do, and I'm gonna do it, I'm just gonna pull down the blackout a little bit. Well, that's not working either, but that could have worked if I had manual settings on. Anyways, I'm trying to get to the point that even a window can be somewhat maneuvered with, controlled. You can put a plant over it. You can sort of try and help it. For example, in Colombia, we were just shooting this big space. It was a beautiful apartment with big windows, a lot of light, but our interest was actually the people in the scene. They were in a dinner table and they were having a breakfast scene. And that was one of the most challenging lighting-wise moments in the shoot. And everyone was like, why? That's it's a beautiful apartment. It's full of light. Like, look at the exterior, all these buildings and this garden. And I agree, but because of the challenge of not having, you know, the regular film lights, that would be a scenario where you use them. Well, the challenge was that all the windows looked like this, and I had to manually expose it, bringing the ISO all the way down and bringing the curtains down and turning them, and you could see little lines, and through the lines, that was visually more appealing than just a white window, especially if it's a big apartment with just white windows. That gave it a little bit more of an interesting look. And just peeking behind the windows, at some points you could see something of the exterior. But this was like on the spot without having much control over the internal lighting. I mean, they just had, you know, the regular kind of lights that you have at a house and not too many lamps. So I mean, there's always the challenge in between practicality and like being fast and just capturing the scene, but also there's always the perfection side, right? Like things could look beautiful and perfect, and everything could be visible, and that's going to take more time, more experience. But as you go along, you'll find little tricks, and you will learn how to just make things nicer and better and blah blah blah. There's also this little lights. They have magnets in the back. They're quite affordable. They might be like $50, $100. And you could always have a couple of these in your kit. And if you guys are going to do trade sort of jobs, there always might be like a toolbox that's like metal, and there is a way to hide them. So it's behind something. For example, if you have a workbench, but your subject is too dark, you might just want to lay it literally on the workbench, but hide it behind a toolbox. So it will work something like, so the bench is this, right? So it's on the bench. The toolbox is this. The person, so you might just need to figure out, you might need to manicure your scene. So move the toolbox a little bit to the left so the light looks, a bit better, and just,
those look like good tools to have in the set, Sarah. Just a couple of those lights, maybe.
Yeah, and they change colors, so
another quick, before we jump into Luce's presentation, Sarah and Michael, can you open up your phone right now? Because it takes a minute to download. Open up your phones and look for Insta360. That way, at the end of this, while we're getting to the real physical setup, we don't need to wait for that download. So it'll say there's a couple of Insta360 apps. You're going to choose the one for the XR2.
XR2. Okay. So we have 361 times 2 or 361R.
Hold on, let me.
not the R, not the R, definitely.
Not the R, right?
So 361 times 2 or just Insta 360?
Oh yeah, that one. Insta 360 1x2 with the number 2. Yeah, that one.
Get it. And then what was the name of the light again? The lights that you had?
If you go, these ones in specific are called MC, M as in Michael and C as in Cindy.
Okay.
And they're a brand called Aperture with an A, Aperture.
Yep. Yeah.
There might be a less expensive brand out there that might be like $50 less.
Okay.
But the other thing to look for is that they have magnets at the back, and that they are, I think they're called LEDs. Yeah, and if you want colors, that they're RGB. So a light that has different color settings, as in, the scope of colors, are called RGB.
Thank you.
And then Sarah, one other thing. So when it says, you can see it, there is one that just says that this is the main app. There's two apps, Insta360 for the One X2, but I can't really see it.
Yep.
It's the one, it just says Insta360. It's got a yellow circle.
That's the one we want. We don't want that X2.
This, well, you can have them both, but this Insta360, it's for One RS-R Go, One X2, One X. It's the app that encompasses all the cameras.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Mhm.
It's just, you're right, it's slow to download. It must be
Yeah,
huge.
that one's a big one. Yep, because it's got an editor feature, an export feature. It connects to your camera, but it unlike the Oculus, it does not. It can be on anybody's camera, so or anybody's phone can be on anybody's camera. So you can connect them if somebody else is filming and they have the camera phone, your camera can connect to their phone. So,
Oh, okay.
but we'll show you that at the end. Okay, Luce, over to you.
Awesome. I'm just going to open the presentation. How do you open this? Share screen. Can you guys see it without the column of participants?
Yep, yep, we got it.
Okay. Is it just showing the screen within the software? Okay.
Mhm.
Please ask questions and interrupt me, please, with any comments, or if anything pops into mind. I want this to be helpful, and practical. So jump in at any time. I just wanted to start saying that 360 is very different to, obviously, flat video, regular video. And nowadays we're very used to very fast cutting, like 1, 2 seconds, 3-second shots, editing that's like super fast, Instagram, TV, ads, And I just wanted to say that I don't think that's very appropriate for 360, because 360, as Lance was saying, it's a first-person perspective experience, an experience of an environment. So it takes us a couple of seconds to adapt to what we're seeing, especially if it's something that we haven't seen before. So, for example, it's like opening your eyes and waking up. Sometimes you need to remember where you're at if you're traveling, something similar to that experience. So I recommend that any shot that you're doing does not last any shorter than 15 to 20 seconds. So I think, it might take 3 to 5 seconds to get used to a shot, and then sort of start exploring the shot. And also, if you're going to have a voiceover, that's something else, that's another element that you need to pay attention to. So it just takes a lot of effort to be doing both things. One is, where am I at? 2, what are they saying to me? And 3 is, I really want to see what's around, right? And there's so many details to look at that, 15 seconds, I think it's a fair amount of time to, to leave someone in an environment. In this shot, in this picture over here, you can see that there's an attachment to the side, guys. That's for sound recording with lavalier mics, which are the little mics that you clip on your clothes. And there's a specific kind that it's wireless, so you could be standing, 30, 20, 10 meters away and speaking, and it's a better quality sound than the actual camera inbuilt microphone. This camera that you guys just got has actually 4 different microphones on each side of the camera, but mixes it all together to do just regular stereo sound. I thought that was quite a neat difference from its predecessor. On this slide, just when you guys are about to set up for a shot, you will see that this will become your ritual. So you're going to screw on the camera onto your tripod, and you're going to adjust the height. It comes quite natural to do it in this order. So as Lance said, it's best to do it eye level, or just below eye level if there is a subject in the scene. So so it looks comfortable for us as a first viewer to be at the same height as this person of interest in the shot. And like Jay said, if there is no subject in the scene, you might just want to adjust it at a height that's like an average height. I don't know, 5 foot or 5'10" or something like that, in the 5s somewhere. Another thing to mind is the stitching line. I don't know if Michael, Sarah, do you guys have experience with filming 360 content with another camera?
No, sorry, Liz. I don't think they do. Go ahead, Sarah. You guys were on mute.
No other camera. Okay,
No.
so the stitch line. The stitch line is. Can you guys see me? Yeah. So your camera looks something like this. This where the screen is, it's usually the forward view. So if you put your goggles on, and this is just automatically this will be the forward view and this will be the backwards view. So the stitch line is around the camera, meaning there's 2 lenses basically, one in the forward, one in the backwards, and they're both 180 degrees, and the software automatically stitches it together, so basically glues it together, right? And they're quite good at it, but not excellent. So we've got to be aware of the stitch line, because you never want to put anything of interest in the stitch line, because it will somewhat alter it, either a little bit, a lot, or completely. So it's just always advisable to never put anything on the side. Also, another advice is to never be any closer to the camera than 2 feet. So that's just a big no. It's like 2 feet, it's definitely not going to work out for sure. It's just going to look terrible. And the stitch line, if you're less than 2 feet or 2 feet at the stitch line, is going to look terrible. So those are 2 things to watch out. Never put anything on the sides. So that's the forward. So wherever you want them to wake up or look at, primarily put the screen towards that side, and make sure that nothing of big interest is on the side, on the sides, on the stitch line. But again, with experience, you guys are going to figure this out, and you're going to start tweaking it and figuring out exactly where it needs to go, the stitch line. Sometimes there's like a little black thing that you need to kind of hide with something else that's black, so I don't know, you'll see it on your iPad or on your phone. You'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna move it like just a little bit so I lose that black thing. And yeah, so the default view. Oh, awesome. we covered everything on this slide. So let's go to the next one. Right, so controlling your camera. So there's an app. I'm not sure if it's the one that you're downloading now or the one that you didn't download, but there's an app, and in that app, you could start recording, you can stop recording, you can adjust your exposure, your various settings, and you could also adjust various modes that the camera has. So that's very practical if you want to hide. As the controller of the camera, you're always going to be checking, that it's recording, that it's on, that it's got enough battery. Well, this app will help you do that because it tells you what amount of battery you've got left. It will show you the image. You can, with your finger, you can move around the 360 view and see your lighting situation or your objects of interest, if they are arranged properly. Little things like that, like manicuring your shots. With time, you will appreciate that and making shots look better, and it will be natural. You will start lighting the scenes better, and you will start arranging little things. I mean, because some of these spaces that are trades, they will have a lot of tools, they will have, things that they're working with. So they might arrange them in a practical way, but that practical way could also just be slightly tidier or nicer for the viewer. Just something's crooked, straighten it up. Something could be closer and easier to grab at the moment of action, so just bring it in closer for them. Little things like that. With time and experience, you guys will realize what subtle and small things you could adjust to make the shot better. But having an iPad when you go film, or your cell phone with you, with the app already charged up and everything, make sure your phone is charged. Have a battery bank if you can. It might be a lifesaver because you might run out of battery on your phone, or the camera might run out of batteries, or and you might not be able to stay at a specific location for long enough. So a power bank is always super practical, and you can just have it in your bag and be charging your phone, or be connected, straight from your energy source on the go. Settings. I think I said this before. So I think it's a good idea for you guys to start with a lot of settings on auto, especially exposure, white balance. Do you guys want me to explain what's exposure and white balance, or is that a little bit?
I think just a brief definition, not in depth, but I think just so we're familiar with each of those things, because when they turn those on, each of those settings will be there, just quick def.
Okay.
Yeah, we can play with it on our own, I think, and
exposure
learn by playing. Yeah.
It's basically the light.
Yeah.
Light. So exposure will adjust two things. So what happens with exposure, it's great for right now, but as you go on, you will when you learn how to move it manually, you will learn how to retain more quality, because usually exposure mode exaggerates a little bit with the light, so it makes it really bright. and it could always be brought down just a little bit down. And with experience, that's what you guys will learn how to do. But for now, exposure is light. White balance is if it's sunlight, if it's an exterior, or if it's an interior and it's lamplight. And then there's, the tube lighting that sometimes flickers. That's very common at supermarkets. That's another option. So white balance is great because automatically it's usually very, very accurate. So it will detect what kind of lighting, sometimes mixture of daylight, interior light, and a little bit of the flickering tube lighting. So color profile. So I recommend to use, there's 3 options. There's log, which is for more advanced people. There's standard, which I think looks great. And there's vivid, which is very colorful, very saturated colors, which might be a matter of preferences. I don't personally like vivid because I feel like it saturates skin tone too much. I think standard's a great option that's in the middle. And a setting that might be a lifesaver, I think, for you guys at some point. You won't use it very often. It's the setting that's called isolated. So I was just saying that the setting, there's a setting in the camera that's called isolated that might be a lifesaver for you guys at some point in life. So basically, if you're in a garage and the garage has exterior light, and then you're actually shooting inside, or like at an airport setting, when they fix the planes and they have like the huge door and it's open. So it's an interior, but it's an exterior. So you put the camera, you make sure that the stitch line, like one lens is forward for the interior and the other lens is for the exterior. You set isolated, and what it does, it exposes one lens differently than the other one, but in automatic. So it will expose for the dark in the forward and for the light in the back facing lens. So it's for extreme situations, and I feel like in trades there might be a couple of them. So if you have an exterior and an interior at the same time, and you're like, this is, there's air coming in, from outside, there's light, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like an interior exterior. You don't even know what to categorize it as. This setting might be appropriate to use. And then video encoding. So there's a couple of modes in this camera. So just make sure that this little icon is always on the screen, the 360 icon, because there's another mode that's called Steadicam that only uses one lens, and this icon changes to 180. It says 180. So just make sure that it's in the right mode. And that you don't experiment with Steadicam unless you guys have other plans in the future. But for the initial plans, you want it to be 360. And there's a codec that you need to choose in the settings. That's H.265. This will just make the files to be smaller. And the resolution, just make sure it's always at its highest potential, which is 5.7K. And frames per second, this is debatable, but I recommend 30 because 30, usually you would record at 24 or 25 in flat video. But when you do 30, it just gives it a slightly more definition. It does have the repercussion that it makes it look a little bit more digital. But because it's 360, I think we want to retain more quality. And so 30 frames per second, it just means it's taking 30 shots per second and making the video. The more shots, the more information to work with.
And that those last two recommendations, always making sure that it's in a HD. I'll show you the setting on there in person. But it's really important to have that going for the highest quality 360 that's manageable in your camera.
So this is the right side of your camera on this picture. So that's where your 64 gig card will go. That's the slot. I think you can only put it in without the battery. So you have to take out the battery to put in the card. It would be good for you guys to start charging up your camera. Try to always keep your batteries charged. It's very useful to know what their stat is, because then when you grab everything to go and shoot, you know that your kit is ready to go, you know that your card's formatted and empty, you know that your batteries are charged, that your iPad or your phone is charged, that your battery bank is charged. So I recommend to have a good habit of, whenever you finish filming, to offload your material, make a copy. So back it up, but don't make a copy from what you just copied onto your computer or your hard drive or whatever. Make it again from its original source, which is the card. Sometimes things could go wrong, like maybe the first offload, you missed the file, or something went wrong. Technology, sometimes it does funny things. So that's why it's always good practice to just do it from the source card twice. So if anything went wrong in the first one, you'll always have the second copy to check. And hopefully in the second copy, everything's fine,
And Sarah, on that note, do you guys use Teams or OneDrive, or what's your file management system there at the trio? Alpina?
OneDrive.
We have OneDrive.
Okay, great. So what I would suggest, and what we do on our side, is just literally setting a file aside that is 360 raw video, backup 1, 360 raw video, backup 2. And then when you can download, it does, it takes up quite a bit of space. So you need to make sure that you have lots of space to play with in those files. And also naming is really important. It seems so silly, but practically naming is important. And before you actually back them up or do the download, you can always look on your camera, that little round screen, and delete pieces or delete shots that are just not, that were terrible. So you're not taking up and having to name shots on the computer, which can take a little bit of time.
Although I would recommend not to do it directly on the camera, because you might accidentally delete something that you needed. That's important. If you're going to do that, make sure you're thinking clearly, and that hopefully you have an iPad or an app tablet where you can see what, properly, you could see what you're looking at, and you are sure you want to delete that. Because I cannot stress enough, there's sometimes accidents happen and you delete something that was really important and it's terrible. So
Luce, you're saying save it and then delete versus deleting it directly from the camera. Is that what I heard?
Well, I think from my opinion, is never delete anything. That's my opinion.
Okay.
And that's standard, like industry practices, never delete anything, even if it's a dud, you know, because it costs so much to film a project to take off, you know, for a project to take off, that you don't want to do something, you know, when you're tired and then delete something that was super important. So that's usually recommended to not delete anything. But if you guys know that something was just, you know, the longest take, it really didn't have anything in it and super heavy, and you guys are short for space, you know, I don't know, something like that, then maybe like Jay says, just make sure you know which is the shot and delete it. And if it's possible, in your phone or on your iPad, which will be your remote control. So it doesn't mean that it's living within your iPad or your phone. It's just in the camera, but you have the ability to delete it from your iPhone or iPad.
And then,
Yeah.
and then one other piece on that, just so you know, when you do the download to your computer, or you look at your files on your camera, you're going to have for every video, you're going to have 3 different files on there. The left, the right, and the what's it called, Luce? The one that brings them together. Anyway, it'll be like 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, and then a third file. They all go together and cannot be separated from each other, or you won't be able to bring those together in an editing software.
Right. Never think that it's an error or anything like that. Files in 360 are like that.
Yep. Great.
And format your card internally. Once you make sure that it's backed up, that you don't want that information, you know, and that you want your camera to be ready for next time, you, with your thumb, slide the menu down, which is the main menu on your camera screen, and you look for the cog, which is a little round thing. And within there, it says card format. So you press it and all the information is going to be erased. So just make sure that you're super certain that your backup is good to go, and then delete it. But there's a satisfaction in doing that, I promise. And each battery lasts approximately 1 hour. It's great to know that you guys have 2 batteries. And I don't know if you guys have a charger. You could charge your batteries internally in the camera with a USB-C cable. That's something practical to know, but I'm almost sure that you guys must have a port where you charge the batteries, but I'm not sure.
Yes, it
Yeah, they-
came with our bundle.
They have the case that can charge 3 batteries at once.
It looks like this.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, those are incredibly handy. And always bring your charger to the location. Like I said, when I recommended to bring a power bank, also just bring your cables don't forget to bring your phone charger, this port charger, because sometimes you just don't know how long you're going to be at the location, and it might be a lifesaver to be able to connect and charge up something.
Is there a specific power bank that you recommend us purchasing, or does it not matter?
No, it depends on your budget. It depends. I mean, it's nice to have ones that are very thin, although they're more expensive.
Okay.
But you know, it's more like a taste or a convenience thing. The important thing is that you have one. But I like the ones that are small because they're not too heavy. They are prettier, you know.
Breaking our rule.
And this one's lens care. So these cameras are so small that it's really easy to smudge the lens, especially if you're like shooting, you're fast, you're hurrying and grabbing the camera and putting it off and blah, blah, blah. You know, you always smudge and touch the lens somehow, even if you try not to. So I always like try not to touch it, but you always touch it. There must be a lens cloth with your kit. So once you put your tripod up, before anything, clean your both lenses. Make sure there's no dust specks or smudges, because in 360 it's very obvious. I mean, in flat video is pretty bad if that happens, but in 360 it's worse. So it's so easy to actually touch it. In a regular camera, you can still avoid it more, but in these ones, it's super common. Even if you're trying to with your camera and stuff, it's very common to touch it or whatever. But
And
always
try to keep that rubber protector on it that came. There's a little rubber lens cap that goes on both lenses. Just try to always keep that on there if you can.
Yeah, never set the camera on any surface without that silicone protecting slip, because you will start to scratch the lens and that will be visible. And I'm not sure if they're replaceable, but I think they might not. So you pretty much ruin the camera. So just never put it down without its protection. And always be mindful of cleaning the lens before turning on the camera and stuff. And you guys got a tripod as well as part of your kit, with 3 legs, or
Yeah,
is it
3 legs. It looks almost just like the one on the left top corner loose that they have with their kit.
Okay, perfect. They are the best, most secure way to proceed, because 3 legs are better than 1. And so it's very common to use a monopod and then wind coming in, or someone not noticing that the camera's there because it's so small, they might bump into the camera. That is common as well. So it's better that you guys have a tripod for sure. And I think that's the end of my slides.
In their kit too, they also, because they're doing some of the job shadow stuff that it's going to require, going up on a catwalk, or going into a concrete factory, or those types of things. They have like a chest mount, and also a wrist mount. So
right. Yeah, for the chest mount, I'm not sure if you guys would like to select a different mode for shooting, which is the 180 Steadicam option. Because of the movement, the Steadicam option might be more appropriate for walking with a chest mount piece. And you won't be using the backward lens, so it's just going to be using that one lens, and it will be steadier.
Mm-hmm. And then the other part of, if you do any type of, well, 2 things. If you take 2 shots, and instead of moving between those 2 shots from point A to point B, like literally with motion, we can put in those spots that basically a hotspot trigger that says go to, where it shows them going to the next spot. So instead of trying to just walk between spot A and spot B, just make sure you have it in a steady location, spot A, and then a steady location, spot B. And then in the editing process, we can insert a go to, boiler room hotspot. Does that make sense? Yeah, everybody?
It does to me, but I'm not sure if Sarah was listening.
Oh, that's okay. No, it's okay.
I'm listening, but you're not speaking my language.
Oh yeah. So I think what he says is, if there's for a smooth transition in between two shots. Am I understanding correctly? So you want a steady shot on a tripod, a steady shot on a tripod, and then you have a bridge. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Where you, for that bridge transition, you're using the chest mount with the camera here. So you shoot that this way.
Oh, no. What I was saying is instead of doing a live motion shot, we can edit to put an icon in there that says go to boiler room, right? So like if you're planning your shots out in terms of like the first one is on the factory floor and the second one's over that office, instead of walking from the factory floor to the office for that 360, the factory floor one has a hot shot arrow that in 360 you can click with your trigger, and then that takes you over to the office.
Do you guys have questions?
I'm sure we will once we start filming. Right now, it's just kind of a lot without actually visualizing and playing with it.
We don't know what we don't know yet.
Yeah, and it does. You know, once you play with it, take a couple of fun shots, edit them, export them out of your app. It's actually very easy to do with your app to export a 360, you know, unedited, you know. And if you download the Insta360 onto your laptop, you can also use that as an editor to play with shots. So it's just about playing a little bit with fun shots and then figuring that out, and then you'll start to get it. The second part that we didn't go into depth on is really script planning, and it's really important. Let's say we wanted to do a job shadow for a shift manager, right? So before you start your filming, you want to sit down and think, okay, what do we want to film? We want to film, what action do we want to film and show the student, which is really interesting. Okay, so you get that all in the script, you know, factory floor, an interaction, some sort of manufacturing taking place. So we're going to film all that. And then what do we want the audio to be? What are we answering along that line? So for the job shadow, what are the key pieces of information that's person that you want to know? And I would say we can do that together, do a draft of a template that you're going to use for almost all of your shadows. And I think that'll be really, once that's done, then it's just kind of plug and play with the next job shadow. You know what questions you want to answer. And then from a student's perspective, when they're watching that, it all sort of flows together too on that. And of course, we're here to help bounce ideas, finalize a template, get that in your hands. And then when something comes up, you just use that template to go through that shadow that you have an opportunity to film with one of your industry partners.
That makes sense.
Great. And Lance loves writing script, right, Lance?
Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it. I'm kind of improvised theater guy though, you know.
Yeah. I think he's pretty good at it. He's written a few that I was pretty impressed with. So whether he loves it or not, he's pretty good at it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that concludes our virtual overview there. Now, team, you guys can maybe I'll keep loose on, but unless you want to stay, you don't have to stay. But now I'm just going to work with Michael and Sarah to make sure that their camera gets connected to one of their phones, and that they're on their feet and ready to take some film. So yeah, anybody who wants to take off can take off. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Okay.
But thank you for everybody in their presentations. Thank you very much.
Yeah.